All right, so today we are very glad to have Professor Chen to share with us on making early STEM learning visible and relational. Professor Jie-Qi Chen is a professor of early childhood education at Erickson Institute in Chicago, the founding executive director of Early Teaching and Learning Academy, and the founder of the Early Maths Collaborative. And now I'll pass on the time to my partner Vivi, and she'll tell you a bit more about Professor Chen.
Thank you, Jenny. Professor Chen is an expert in early math education, educational implications of multiple intelligences theory, classroom assessment, and teacher professional development. As the founder of Erickson's Early Math Collaborative, she established a program that helped early childhood educators to overcome their math teaching anxiety and to build their understanding of foundational mathematics. Now, she leads the Early Teaching and Learning Academy as the founding executive director, wherein the aim is to transform the early childhood workforce by developing and implementing a targeted, effective, and sustainable professional development system that incorporates the art and science of early teaching and learning. Besides, she served as the chair of Policy, System, and Profession Committee, and a member of Finance Committee at the governing board of the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and consultant to the United Nations Children's Fund, and a fellow in Project Zero Classroom at the Harvard University. Besides, she was also named as a Fulbright Senior Specialist in Education.
Right. Again, if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A box below. We will select the most relevant ones addressed later in the discussion section. And thank you so much for your kind understanding. So Professor Chen, please.
Okay, can you see everything? Hello? Yeah, good? Okay, great. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present in this conference. So the title of my presentation is Making STEM Learning Visible and Relational. And you can see here, I highlighted two words, visible and relational, which are the focus of my talk today. Well, today we are here together for this conference related to early STEM learning because we believe early investment in STEM will pay off. However, not all early STEM learning experiences are equal. It is those well-designed and high-quality early STEM experiences that are conducive to the gains in executive function and the range of academic and the social skills, as just Professor Marilyn Fleer and showed us. So then the question is, what kind of a well-designed, high-quality early STEM experience look like? What does that look like? Again, I'm going to respond to this question from two aspects. And as my title indicated, which are visible and relational. Now let's first look at the visible part of STEM learning. And why is it important to make STEM learning visible? What does that visible mean? And I'm going to talk about this from 4 reasons. These 4 reasons are all related to the developmental characteristics of young children's learning. First, children are equipped with basic capacities and dispositions to explore the STEM field. But their drive to make sense of the world can be misconstrued based on their naive beliefs, some kind of a method and scientific concept. So then you might want to ask, and what do you mean about these naive beliefs? For instance, young children tend to believe the bigger the wheels are, the faster the car will run. You know, it makes lots of sense when the wheels are bigger and you open and you each one and you take more space, right, and go farther and or a lot more distance. Or young children will believe and where the rain comes from, and the rain comes from holes in clouds. Or objects float in water because they are lighter than water. These concepts, very intuitive, it seems really common sense. But if we don't really help children understand the scientific big ideas behind what is really in the flow and the weight of the object relationship. And the children will carry this kind of a concept, this misconcept, this naive belief to a long time that will affect their learning. And several years ago, and there was a very interesting videotape and talk about and videotaped MIT and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Their students, after 4 years of learning, the world best university of technology, and in their graduation ceremony, and there was a videotape asking them some of these very basic questions. Surprisingly, and many still hold those naive beliefs. So it is very important early on and help children develop some basic scientific concept. Secondly, children are inherently curious. We know children are curious about the world around them, but their curiosity may not persist or motivate sustained investigation. We know children's attention span is relatively short, and their initial curiosity may not continue if there's no further stimulation, including conversations, questions, or more challenging situation. Third, children ask questions all the time. Why is it so hot? Why moon follows us? And why, and the people get sick, and so on and so forth. But if and they don't get answer right away, or if they don't discover those answers, they abandon the questions. Last, children love solve problems, but they may give up when their solution do not work well the first time. We see this, oh, keep doing. They say, no, I'm leaving. So these are the reasons that we need to make learning visible. Now, how to make learning visible? Children's, as I said before, children's natural abilities are necessary to develop an understanding of the STEM field, but not sufficient. We, adults, parents, teachers, need to assist children to foster, guide, and build on their interests to ensure adequate, high quality, and sustained early learning experience. I'm going to talk about this from two aspects. One is representation. And Dr. Fleer actually talked a lot about this, but I'm going to highlight these two aspects. One is represent the process and the thinking using a variety of forms, drawings, writing, graphing, and so on and so forth. Second, communication. Not just represent, you need to talk. STEM learning is not just a hands-on experience. It is also the planning, the discussion, the reflection, is the conversation. Okay, I'm going to give you two examples to illustrate these two aspects of making STEM learning visible. First, this is called the mailbox and the post office project. And this is an example from University of Chicago Laboratory School. And here you see a group of 3 or 4-year-old and the youngest children in the school. And in this classroom, children have 2 turtles. And they give name, one turtle called Sparkly Dress, the other called Fred. Okay, and University of Chicago Laboratory Schools is on University of Chicago campus. On campus, there's a church, and during springtime, and there's weddings, and so children walk to school or come back to home, and they see those newlyweds or walk through the red carpet, and so they have a good idea. They want to get their turtles married. So there's another project that's a different topic, but after their discussion, lengthy discussion, they made all the plan about the wedding, and they want to invite the entire school children and the parents to come to their turtle wedding. So they wrote an invitation. Here is the invitation you see here. Here it says, and the wedding of a sparkling dress and Fred, and it's going to happen in the botanical garden, and it's Tuesday, the time. And these kids understand, in order for their invitation to be respectful, it needs to be a card, not just an email, and you send an email to the whole school. That's not enough. But the question is, how do you deliver these kind of invitation to everyone? So children came out idea is a mailbox and the post office. Okay, so these are children's personal experience. They all know if you have something, you send invitation, like a birthday invitation, wedding invitation, you put it in a mailbox, you put it in a post office. So this become a school-wide project in the early childhood school of the laboratory school. What do we think? Well, we think, okay, give children some materials, tools, let them build this mailbox, let them build a post office. No. Teachers at the University of Chicago Laboratory Schools asked the children to start with the design. Draw your mailbox. What kind of mailbox do you like to have? Present that idea to the group. Then we're going to vote based on some criteria, such as a structure and how sturdy your mailbox is, and the materials, what kind of materials you're going to use, size, how big it should be, and the function. Is it easy to get the mail? Should we have a door, so on and so forth? And here you see, children are drawing their design. What do they do when they draw? They make their thinking visible, precise, and articulate. And here, and you see just a couple of examples and children working together to build this mailbox. And in the process of building the mailbox, there are some other issues emerged, such as how high is just right? If it's too high, then kids won't get it. If it's too low, you have to kneel down. So there's a lot of things that they didn't think about at the beginning, now become an issue. And here is another example of the mailbox. Then, and kids thinking about, okay, we have a mailbox, we need a post office. Then teacher divided children into teams of workers. and including architects, construction workers, interior designer, painters, stamp designers. Okay, each individual needs to write, quote, quote, write a letter of interest and interviewed for a person on a team. So people really coordinated together and think about it. Here is just a team of architects. They are working on their designs. You see, there's lots of discussions and the design revised several times. So here, and I think again, as which showed example from in the early on and demonstration, and also Dr. Freer talk about this community building, the connection of each other, and the literacy development, because you're talking, you're communicating. And here, architects are serious about the design process. They discuss many possibilities for the post office based on materials they have and time constraints. You can't just go on and on and on. There is a time constraint. And the construction workers and working together to build their post office, and they are measuring and they are nailing and the pieces together. And here is a teamwork, and they are building their post office, and it has to be a teamwork. There's no way one person can get these things done. And here are the interior designers. They are thinking about the inside of the posters, and the painters are working to decorate the post office. And finally, each group has this reflective and the celebrating process. And here the picture you show is the first group that had a turtle wedding group. They were so happy and about their turtle wedding ceremony, as well as they were the initiator for the school-based post office and the mailbox project. So here they were singing the song and they celebrate and they draw their feelings and their thinking. So what I want to see here is the representation and the communication throughout the activity revealed children's thinking process, so that the STEM learning is not just the process, but that this process is visible. And this process, during this process, children were constantly asked to represent their ideas, to communicate them with others. For instance, they have to apply for the position, and for each team, they need to draw the plan, they need to show the plan to the team, they need to discuss the idea, they need to revise the idea, then they were working. This visible learning process promotes the idea exchange and the collective problem solving. Well, some of you might ask, this is a wonderful project, we love it, but this is quite elaborated project. It's not always so easy for us to do something like this. Sometimes we just have a little time and we don't have this whole school collaboration, the possibility and the time to do this. So we're going to show you another example, just one classroom and one very simple activity, which is water play. And I'm sure every classroom almost in your school has a water table. Children love to play water, inside or outside. However, this 4-year-old classroom teachers found out after a while, this water play is just not challenging enough. Children still play during free time, But they're sort of like a little kind of a mandate, little kind of a routine activity, like pouring and the playing things. It was, yes, there's a measurement and there is a kind of a math science learning. But it's just children seem to get a little bit bored. So what did they do? They created a water tree. A tree, okay? Just use all the recycling materials. Now, think about this 4-year-old. What do you think children's response to this water tree? What kind of questions might they ask? Here you see children. Oh, this is actually is almost in the later November. I'm sorry, later October. In Chicago, later October is quite cold, but these children just, oh, so into it. I was there that day and just see these children could not stop. They loved the novelty of this water tree. Then lots of questions came up. How to make sure the water flow from the top, this little milk bottle, and to the bottom of this in the pipe, then come back to the little red bucket. Okay, and do we need to pour the water from the top all the time? Are there other ways to get water flow? How many different ways to do it? Is it a possible type of water flow in a different direction? Maybe from bottom to the up. Not just play, but also representation. Yes, children have a good time to play this water tree. They can't have enough, but they also constantly talking, laughing, and engaging the conversation. And we see here, teacher asked the child to draw what's her thinking of the water would flow. And we see here, representation and the communication are central to STEM learning. Why is that? Here is the summary. First, early STEM experience often overemphasize hands-on activities and underemphasize communication about those activities and the representation that stem from the activities, such as drawing pictures, making data tables and graphs, and writing numerical representation. Secondly, while hands-on activities are necessary part of studying STEM discipline, they do not, in and of themselves, active thinking and conceptualization. Representation helps document the learning process and making learning and thinking visible, while communications facilitate the idea exchange, invite questions, stimulate thinking, and lead to generalization and production of new ideas. Okay, I pause here just for a few seconds for you to go through this, because this is the summary of my first point, making STEM learning visible. Why representation and the communication are so important in increasing the quality of STEM learning. Okay, let's go to the second point, which is making STEM learning relational. This relational has both social as well as a physical aspect. Relational, relation to people, and the relation to the object, relation to the idea, relation to the event. Again, why is relational so important? Because learning, first and foremost, is a social process. And I'm going to show you a videotape called the visual clip experiment. This is a very famous experiment, and lots of people probably already know it. And this talk about baby 9 to 12 months, 14 months, when they start learning crawling and crawl from one. This is called the glass table. On the table, half of the table, and it is not transparent. You won't be able to see the bottom, so the young baby can crawl. But in the middle of the table, and the become glass. So the child, when they crawl to that line, they can see the depths. So, and literally, and the child heart beats fast, and they develop a little fear because there's depth. Okay, so I want you to pay attention to the child's response to the adult. What the adult's facial expression, the adult didn't see any words, and just look at their facial expression and how child respond to that facial expression.
Emotion is a nonverbal language. Emotions reveal cognition, the understanding, maybe. And furthermore, emotions are the nonverbal communication of the baby towards the parent and the parent towards the baby. Therefore, I thought that emotions were a real root to the study of the baby's development.
In this study, babies between 9 and 12 months are brought into the lab and placed on a large plexiglass top table. Half of the table has a checkerboard pattern just underneath the surface. But halfway across is a visual cliff, which the baby can tell drops off steeply. The plexiglass top continues, so it's perfectly fine to proceed. But the baby isn't so sure. And this is a big drop for a baby just starting to crawl. She wants to get across to get the toy, but she's cautious and looks to the opposite end of the table where her mother is. The parent is instructed to smile or make a fear face.
If the mother is posing a fear face, the baby typically does not cross this stair step downward, this modified visual cliff or visual step. On the other hand, if the mother poses a smile or somehow poses a nonverbal communication that is not prohibited but encouraging, the child is much more likely to cross over to her. This particular study demonstrates the role of nonverbal communication in determining the child's behavior in uncertain contexts. The baby will, when they encounter something ambiguous, something uncertain, will typically look to the significant other, the mother, the father, the grandparent, the caregiver, in order to figure out what to do. So by 11 to 12 months of age, the baby is already doing what all of us do when something unusual happens. We look around to figure out how other people are reacting.
Okay, give you just 1 second to think about what you get from this video. STEM learning is a risk-taking process. Being failure is a part of a process. So children do not always know the results, do not always know the solution. So in this kind of situation, it is very important, just like a baby cross the table, they will need to get assurance from adults. Not necessarily and how much you know it, but your attitudes, your emotion affect children's learning. Unfortunately, this is a study of American and college major students. And we see here, and from math, science major, physical science, social science, humanities, business, health science, and the elementary education. We do not have a preschool education major, but what it shows here is the elementary school education students have the highest math anxiety. In the United States, we do know preschool teachers have even higher math anxiety. And one of my doctoral students did a dissertation, and then often lots of early childhood teachers in the United States say one of the reasons they teach early childhood is because they don't have to teach that hard science or math. And why teacher anxiety is so matters so much. And here the example I gave it is all about maths, because that's what I study the most. Okay, and here we see the blue bar are lower math anxiety teachers. Okay, this is the blue bar. So, and the red bar are higher math anxiety teachers. And when these teachers interact with their students, there is interaction. Okay, if teachers have a lower math anxiety, their students' math performance typically higher. If teachers have if teachers have a higher math anxiety, their students would tend to have a lower end math performance. In other words, is a negative correlation. And this effect is bigger on girls than boys. Okay, and because girls tend to, stereotype, but that is the cultural stereotype that girls tend to more listen to teachers, particularly in the earlier age. So teachers' anxiety in STEM matters a lot. Teacher math anxiety is associated with less math learning, particularly for girls. And this stereotype confirmed in a very early age. And here is an example and is a study from first graders. They were asked to draw children who are reading or who are doing the math. And we see more girls were reading and more boys are doing the math. So this is the first grade. They already have this kind of stereotypical and beliefs. And then let's think about the parents. This is about the high school, not the end of elementary school, okay? But what we see here is a parent math anxiety and homework help do not mix well. And this bar shows here the green, the white bar is, okay, let's look at this. First, look at this, the left side. Here's a low math anxiety parents. So if it's a low math anxiety parents, the more homework help, the better for their children's math performance. In other words,
幫助啦，即係能夠咧就幫到佢嘅仔女多啲啦，做數學功課。咁但係相反嚟講咧，如果我父母本身咧係對數學咧係有焦慮嘅，比較高啲嘅，咁你咧就擺好多時間幫你嘅子女做數學功課啦。咁但係你嘅子女咧喺數學方面嘅表現都唔會好過。咁所以咧，有600個咧係家庭咧係隨機抽樣咁嚟到做呢個嘅研究㗎。佢哋都做一個控制，就係話咧控制晒老師啊，同埋其他嘅一啲嘅背景嘅可變嘅因素㗎，你要做呢個研究啊，有控制㗎。咁所以睇到有時父母就會即係怪啲細路仔或者啲課呢啲嘅數學表現咁差啊等等。 有時覺得點解你咁都唔識啊？等等，你老師搞啲乜㗎？咁有時啲父母可能會咁講。咁但係其實呢個情感啊，都係會嗰個反應咧，都會影響嗰個仔女嘅學習㗎，同埋咧對自己嘅自信都會有影響。咁我應該點做咧？我哋知道咧，就話有時咧成人嘅態度啦，影響個細路仔嘅學習 STEM 啦嘅態度啦，同埋佢自己對自己信心啦。咁亦都會啲幼兒嘅階段都影響到嗰個細路仔咧，跟住嗰個嘅學習嘅。咁當然咧，有啲嘅 STEM 嘅材料其實對父母好有用㗎。咁但係喺學校其實咧，老師可以做啲乜嘢咧？就係希望咧，我哋應該咧係同嗰個 STEM 學習同幼兒嘅日常生活啦、遊戲啊同埋項目經驗有關咧，係會有幫助。咁呢個係一個例子啦，就叫做咧係好多個細路仔咧喺美國咧都會中意去露營㗎。咁你去露營嘅時候咧，好多時候啲細路仔都會有呢個嘅燈光啦，自己就做啲燈光啦。咁佢嗰時候就會真係模仿呢一個好黑嘅地方，咁你有着燈咁樣㗎。幫我哋用呢啲嘅係少少嘅光線嚟睇書咁樣。咁嗱，我哋睇下啦，呢個嘅光燈，咁對啲細路仔有啲咩嘅學習？
電池，有燈泡，這讓孩子來體驗。那老師呢，就會說，那我們來自己做一個閱讀的燈。這個孩子呢，大家可以看到最左邊呢，他在這個燈呢是戴在自己的手指上。中間這個孩子呢，他把這個閱讀的燈呢放在一個放大鏡，這一個呢就是一個電話本，這個電話本上面的字體呢又很小，所以他需要用一個放大鏡。右邊的這個孩子呢，他的這個燈呢是放在這個一個紙板上面，這樣子呢，他就可以用兩隻手就拿着他所看的書。這就是孩子們他們自己的體驗。這也是在芝加哥大學的校園裡有個鐘塔，要上這鐘塔的話呢，就要爬樓梯。我們呢就讓孩子們去爬這個樓梯，然後拍了一些照片，然後就把這兩張照片放在一塊兒。這個呢就是我孩子所做的，這也是孩子們他們自己的體驗。那當然，我們在日常生活當中有很多的機會，比如說在視頻當中做了這個餅乾的項目、購物的項目，左右這種。
好經驗㗎，亦都叫做去做烹飪啊、烘焙啊，就可以用到嗰個嘅數學啦，或者係科學嘅概念。咁想俾大家睇另外一個非常之好嘅例子，就係話咧，做一啲咧去幫助人哋嘅一啲嘅項目。你可以試下啲嘅叫大哥哥、大姐姐做一啲嘅細地嘅積木啦，嚟到去幫一啲嘅細個啲嘅小朋友，嚟到去滿足呢啲特別嘅需要㗎。咁你諗下，即係啲細路仔都可以當自己係一個大哥哥、大姐姐咁樣啊？點樣去到滿足人哋啲細路仔嘅需要？你睇下呢個積木咧，其實做到好多係出嚟嘅。我哋嗰啲嘅比較細個啲嘅兒童咧，佢哋就面對一啲嘅挑戰，就係啲細地嘅細路仔可能有嗰啲嘅積木唔夠啊。咁佢哋又唔係好知點樣去製造到唔同嘅物件出嚟，咁啲大姐姐就可以幫佢哋啦。咁咧 令到咧嗰啲大哥哥大姐姐有個動力咧，就去做一啲嚟到幫呢啲嘅細個啲嘅細路仔。咁學校咧亦都有一個機器啊，能夠幫助啲大哥哥姐姐做一啲嘅積木。咁就你見到呢個圖畫啦，佢哋可以做一啲嘅畫啲圖畫，或者係設計唔同嘅形狀出嚟啦。嗰個嘅挑戰咧，唔係淨係話製造個積木而已嘅，因為你可以用嗰啲機器啦。咁即係做咗設計嘅機器就可以同你做其餘嘅工序。但係咧，唔係如果你係用呢個依靠呢啲嘅機器做呢啲積木咧，其實做出嚟係唔係咁靚㗎。啲時候真係仲需要用砂紙嚟對做一啲嘅摩擦，令到嗰啲嘅積木咧係比較滑身嘅。咁呢個就有人去做㗎啦，啲小朋友去做。咁呢個咧亦都係需要擺時間落去㗎。咁啲大個啲嘅細路仔就用佢哋食晏嘅時間啦，或者小息嘅時候咧，就嚟到呢個嘅嗰個實驗室啦，就咧去用砂紙去磨嗰啲嘅積木啦。其實好辛苦㗎，唔容易做嘅，但係佢哋咧係堅持啦，因為佢哋咧知道咧有一個細路仔，一個更加細嘅小朋友咧，係等緊咧攞佢哋呢個嘅製成品啊！嗱，呢個就係佢哋嘅製成品啦，好靚㗎，唔係佢哋嘅產品嚟嘅，係非常之好㗎。俾啲更加細個啲嘅細路仔知道咧，其實咧佢哋能夠咧得到呢啲幫助啦，唔係想像式㗎，唔係假㗎，唔係就諗而已，係真係咧細路仔大哥哥姐姐做出嚟俾佢哋嘅。咁當然啦，我哋都見到啲教授嘅一個嘅分享當中睇到，其實書都係好重要㗎。我哋可以用兒童書啦，或者繪本啦，嚟到去幫助細路仔學習㗎。一啲嘅係論述啦等等，或者係嗰個嘅透過呢啲嘅書本咧，可以讓啲細路仔學習到科學嘅概念。咁睇下啦，大家見到啲圖片啦，你可以見到咧，其實老師都可以咧係提出唔同嘅問題咧，去挑戰細路仔嘅。譬如你可以問下
need to build a window and what kind of shapes and for the blocks would be best for you to build a tall building. And the teacher can also challenge the children and saying something like, well, imagine a king and a queen have given you a list of features they want in their castle. They want a staircase, and they want a tower, and they want one beautiful window, things like that. And you can also give ask two children to create, give them the same and design, ask them to create their own. So then the children can compare their structure. And now I'm going to show you example of a group of children building the tower. And the question here is, which tower is taller? And this is Omar. You will meet him and some classmates in the following video. When the video begins, a different group of children has already constructed a tower. Okay, the one which colored block at the top. There's colored block on top. And Omar built a second tower, the one we'll see in this photo. And that's the tower. And then they will compare which tower is taller. Let's hear what the teacher asked the children and how Omar responded.
Me to do? Where should I hold it? Here? All the way to the cone? Then which one to start? What is it? Color.
Well, Omar believes his tower is taller. Okay. Teacher did not correct him, but keeping ask him, can you prove this to me? How do you know this one is taller? That's the way to help children thinking, exploring, and understand gradually. There's no need to really correct a child at the moment if a child is not convinced yet. And one last point I want to emphasize is the language. Okay, as I said earlier, while hands-on activities are a necessary part of studying STEM discipline, they do not in and of self is enough. We need the language. Language help articulate, consolidate, and communicate thinking, and help us retain our learning experience. Okay, if a child feels that adult engage and care about her or him, makes her or him feel safe, valued, and competent, I think I missed something. Never mind. Okay, and the child will be ready to learn. Okay, so we're talking about and relational of learning is and adult needs to care about the child. So, and my takeaway message, again, just 2 points. Children are naturally curious about their surroundings. They love to explore and ask questions all the time. They are also interested in learning new ideas. For us adults, to build on these natural proclivities onto a productive STEM learning experience, we need to bring what is invisible to visible. Thinking is not always visible. It is the communication and the representation bring that to visible and to for people to see and for people to hear. And secondly, learning is a social process. In order for children to feel comfortable to take a risk, to explore something new, and not afraid of making mistake and for being failing, they need to feel some people, personal connections, and they need to feel that adults care about them, and so that they can continue learning and exploring and developing. Thank you so much.
Professor Chen, it is stunning to gain such an eye-opening experience. So we already have some questions coming from the floor. As we all know, STEM learning needs to fit with the cultural context. Our audiences have asked some similar questions. So how to cultivate STEM learning in the local kindergartens in Hong Kong with constraints like space, resources, thought process, etc. For example, in Hong Kong, we usually have group activities. Then how often should a teacher intervene if the children are heading in a wrong direction in their STEM exploration?
Well, I'm not sure there is a really wrong direction, okay, because as I said earlier, making mistake and being fail is a part of a STEM learning or any learning process. Okay, if a child will never feel and that they can make any mistake, they will never learning. We learn from our mistake. So what the teacher's role and all adults is not just one kind of role. Teacher can be participant, sometimes just simply participant, and just like you play with the child. Sometimes you're just being an observer, really quiet, take mental notes, and observe at what point you need to intervene. You need to ask questions. And the very important two things in English we say, first, I notice, oh my goodness, Vivian, I notice you are really trying to fix this. And I wonder if you can think about a different blocks. I wonder if you have thought about trying something different. I wonder why you are thinking about this way. Notice and wonder. And you engage children thinking with you, okay? And sometimes it is simply it provides some materials. And sometimes you might just want to add a hand. So there are multiple ways for you to work with the children to help them to a direction that really more productive and more toward the goals.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Chen, for your fruitful feedback. And it is also grateful to see audiences are interested in knowing more ways to foster young children's STEM development. And so moving on, today we are glad to have Professor Marilyn Fleer from Australia and Professor Chen from the USA to share their insights on early STEM. Thank you all so much.